Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
You're live.
All right, ready? Here we go. In Kitzur, we're quasi starting a new section here of moving on to the next, if I could say, next stage of death, which is a little bit getting to, that doesn't sound so good, but getting a little bit to the Yom HaDin, the way the Yom HaDin works, but the different dinim that a person passes through, the different stages that he passes through, okay? The Vilna Gaon writes in a few places, specifically if you want to look it up, in Aderet Eliyahu, it's in the beginning. I'm sorry, can you give me a chumash? There's a chumash? One right inside. Yeah. What? Right out the door, there's a chumash. And Aderet Eliyahu in the beginning of Sefer Dvarim, and also the Even Shlomo, which are the Svarim of the Vilna Gaon. Over there, he actually brings down an interesting phenomenon. He says before a person gets to Gan Eden Elyon, before he gets to the higher Gan Eden, he passes through 11 Masaot. He says 11 Masaot is what a person passes through. And he lists it for us, okay? We'll only go and do us a favor. He says the first Masa that you go through, it's going to be faster than you think, don't worry. The first Masa that you go through is the Din V'Cheshbon, which I'm going to speak about today actually. The Din V'Cheshbon that a person has when he goes from his house until the kever. From the time that a person, from the place, I guess the hospital also, from his house to the hospital until the kever, that's considered the first masa of where he has to go to. After that, from the kever, he goes to Gehenim. Okay, from the kever. We're going to speak about Chibuta kever probably next week, but he goes to from the kever number 2 kilu. He goes to Gehenim. Now, what does it mean? He goes to Gehenim. That's something we'll speak about after Chibuta kever. B'li neder, we're going to speak about Gehenim. Not that it's relevant for anyone here, but just so you know what other people have to go through. And over there, it's mentioned that people should know that everybody actually goes through Gehenim. Even Tzadikim go through Gehenim. I didn't even know that until I don't know how long ago. And because I always knew there was a saying that they always said, I remember when I was younger, they said the Bach is a piush on the tour. The Tzadikim from about 500 years ago. He was the father-in-law of the Taz. Adam Choshev. We know the Bach is always on the Gemarot, the Hagot and the Gemarot. So one time I heard that the Bach went through Gehenim, but they turned off all the fires when he went through. He kind of just walked through and then he went through Gan Eden straight. He went through that. Kilu, they had to turn it off for him. So someone else told me, you shouldn't tell that to people because it sounds bad. It sounds, why did he have to go to Gehenim? But the truth is he was wrong because everybody goes through Gehenim. Some people they turn the fires off, some people they don't. That's what it is. The Tzadikim, the people who are in the higher levels, you need it as a kind of passageway to get to Gan Eden, but for some people it's just not painful, Pasha. You just go through there in order to get to Gan Eden, okay? But that's just just a way to get there. There's different Rikiyot, and one of the things a person goes through is Gehenim, until he gets to. Obviously, depending on how bad he was or where he was holding, that's how high the fires are stoking. That's how much the barbecue's on. It's not so bad to stand on a barbecue when it's off. It doesn't bother you so much, right? So it's not that bad, and that's the second masa that a person goes through after being buried. That starts after being buried with Chibuta kever, then he goes to Gehenim. That's what he says. That's number 2. That's for sure what the Goyen says, but I think it's coming from a Zohar, if I'm not mistaken. But again, it's a means to an end. I mean, it's just a way to go.
How do you understand the idea?
Maybe you get to see everybody. I'll tell you the truth. He for sure says the Vilna Gaon. I could double check to check where the thing is. What?
You wait till all the Chevron.
No, the Chevron. Hey, what is my...
What's that in
exactly.
painting when you have no good?
Oh, that's a different story. So that's Gehenim. When we speak about Gehenim, we're going to speak about that. Yeah, it's a Ruchnis type of pain. It's not a Gashmish pain. When I say the fire, it's just a kind of phrase that people use, but it's not fire. Okay, that's exactly what we're going to speak about when we speak about Gehenim. That's number 2. The third one, he goes from Gehenim to Gan Eden Hatachton. There's Gan Eden Hatachton, which is the lower Gan Eden. That's number 3. Okay, and now we're going to make a jump of 7 tiers over here. And then from there he goes up 7 rikim. Okay, those are the next 7. So I was at number 3, so the next 7 is 10. You go straight to 10. Okay, you thought it was going to be here all day. Right, those 10. If you want to know the names of all 7 rikim, just so when you pass by them you remember them, they are called Vilon, which is kind of like a window, Rikia, which we know is a firmament, Shchakim is like the skies. These are all translations, but obviously it means much more than that. Vilon, Rikia, Shchakim, Zvul is the 4th, Mo'on is a compartment or something like that. Machon, and then Arvut. Arvut is where you're Arev, where you have a closeness, you have a certain Nensakite, a certain nearness to the thing. So then we're up to number 10. That's number 10. And then finally, number 11 is Gan Eden Elyon. He says that's the final Gan Eden Elyon. After you go through these 7 Shlavim, you go from Gan Eden Tachton to Elyon, through the 7 Rakiyas, and then as a result of that, you do it. This is all brought down in the Evan Shlomo Perik Yud. If you want to see it in Sif Tedvav in the Aderet Eliyah in the beginning of Dvarim. Let me just finish one thing though. And he says that's Pshat also in the Pasuk in Sefer Dvarim. Achadisar Yom, when Moshe Rabbeinu says Achadisar Yom Michorev Derech Har Seir Ad Kadesh Barnea. He says there were 11 days that we passed Michorev, that we went from Chorev. What's 11 days? The 11 steps, the 11 stages that a person has to go through from the time that he dies until he gets to the higher Gan Eden, until he gets to the higher heavens. It takes 11 stages. Achadisar Yom Michorev. What's from Chorev? From Churban, from Chor, from destruction, from death, in other words, right? Achadisar Yom, from the time that a person leaves his house, he leaves his house Charev, he leaves his house desolate, that's the word Charev, Chorev. So he has 11 passageways from the time he leaves his house. He has these 11 stages that he has to go to, and through Derech, how do you have to go? And this is the Pshat I'm going, Derech Har Seir. He has to go through Har Seir. Seir is, of course, we know, is representative of Edom, which is Esav, and Seir and Edom, which is Esav, is always red. The redness of Esav, which always is a representation. Esav is a representation of Gehenim. He was always the idea of Gehenim. That's where we always get the redness of the Admoni, the person who was Admoni, the redness of Esav. He says that's what it means. You went Derech Har Seir, through Seir. You always have to go through to get to the higher Gan Eden Tachton, Elyon, 7 Rikiyot, etc. One has to go through Har Seir. Ad Kadesh Barnea, until Baruch Hashem he finally reaches his Kedusha of Barnea, which he says that's Gan Eden Elyon. Kadesh Barnea al Pisod is always referred to as as a Gan Eden Ha'elyon. Okay? Has obviously to do with Kedusha and more than that. That's the words of the Gon who Yoda Bekol V'Yad Kol. He was unbelievable how he knew the Pshat and Sod, everything was just completely underneath his fingertips, and he could it mixes everything, all psukim in this, everything is always involved. And B'kitzur, he says that's what happens, that's the remez in the pasuk here, which Moshe Rabbeinu was telling us about what happens after a person dies. So you guys read this every time in Dvarim, and everybody doesn't know what I was talking about today. I don't understand why not. I'm not following this problem. It's the beginning of Dvarim, Mamish in the beginning. Second pasuk. And Sefer Dvarim. Yeah, go ahead.
How long does all this take?
Oh, first of all, it depends on the person. It definitely depends on the person. And second of all, I can't tell you in detail. To be perfectly honest. Some people just go straight through Gehenim. Some people have to take at least 12 months, and some people never make it out. Right? Some people, the real Rishaim, never ever make it out of there either. But there's a different, very, very different. Some of the, I'll slightly, and when we speak about Gan Eden, we'll slightly speak about the answer, but I don't think we'll ever get a full positive answer. I mean, one day you will get a full answer, but not from here. Okay? Anyway, so that's that. Okay. On that note, what happens now? And we're going to speak about this also halachically and also shkafically. On the first Masah, which we're speaking about, we're now speaking about when a person gets taken from his house, or like I said, from the hospital to the kever. We said that was the first Masah. So over there, in the Sfarim, they're right, the Goen writes this over there, and also in Divrei Emet and other places. It's also, we're going to see, it's written in a couple places in the Zohar. Again, like I mentioned, this week's parsha in the Zohar, packed. All parshas Vayechi, that's Mamish Parsha Vayechi is where all of the action is about this. But basically it says like this: Be'oto eight, at the time that they're molich the person to the kever from there until he reaches the Beit HaKvarot. Okay, so over there he's able to see the punishments of Gehenim that, let's say, are in store for him, and also he sees what's the Gan Eden that's in store for him. He's what we say in here, like he's Archu Parchi. He's not Nishtahir. He's nowhere right now. He's not in Gehenim. He's not Gan Eden. He just gets what do you say? One of these preview of what's in to come, what's in for coming. Okay, and he's able to see from both sides. Now, part of what it says, there's all his amul, the amount of time that he extra overspent, I said on purpose, on chasing after money, or kesef izov, will end up being kutzim be'enov. It'll be very difficult for him because he will realize if he did it incorrectly, if he wasn't honest with his dealings, he's going to be koneh Gehenim with it. He's going to end up getting Gehenim with it, and he's going to lose his darga, his level in Gan Eden also. First of all, he gets more Gehenim, and second of all, even in Gan Eden, we know there are many different levels. That's what it says here. And he's going to realize what a chavala was that I wasn't wasting my time. And like we mentioned, I think I mentioned in the past, it's an excruciating pain, not necessarily the fires of Gehenim per se, but the amount of charata, the amount of pain a person feels about what I could have done and I didn't take advantage of. And now it's too late. You're just thinking, oh, it's that feeling of if I just would have, right? I'm sure we've all had that feeling sometimes. If I just wouldn't have made that stupid mistake. Chas v'shalom, someone who does something very stupid, chas v'shalom, let's say, he drives recklessly and chas v'shalom causes a very serious injury or death to another person, Rachmana litzlan. So a person will never live it down. He'll never live it down. He'll say, if I only, and it's a thing that you live. This is 1,000,000 times more than that. He even says the lashon of the Goyen is like this: the shivron lev is kol kach chazak. You have such a broken heart from the situation that why did I do that? I should have just not driven so fast. I should have, what was so stupid? Or a person who's got 20 years in prison for some stupid business mistake that he made. He's sitting there for the whole 20 years crying about it, just wishing if I just didn't do that. He said this shivron lev is chazak, that if he had this tsar in Olam Hazeh, if he had this pain in Olam Hazeh, it would be elef alafim, 1,000,000 times, he would have to die from the pain. If you were in this world and had the same pain, you would die from the person would die from such a great pain. I'm reading the words of the Goyim, okay, not my own. V'yipol Sarah, he would lose all his hair from the excruciating pain that he's going through. He would rip his basar, his flesh, and he would say, Ech ichlafti olam nitzchi ve'oneg al olam choshech. How could I have wasted so much time and such stupidity when I had the opportunity to do much more? That tsar azeh kashela mikol yisuri Gehenim. That's the words of the Goyen. It's harder than all of Gehenim, this tsar. That's some tsar. In other words, when the person is going to the kever at least and feeling it, however long that lasts afterwards, it's more difficult than the whole entire Gehenim. And what he's pointing out is it's worse in this world, at least when a person is going through excruciating pain. So Hashem does him a chesed. He dies. To a certain extent, it's a certain chesed. At least the person can be put out of his misery when he's like that. But over there, there's no such thing as being put out of your misery. It continues, and again, and again, and again. And it's an excruciating pain which can't be swallowed, which can't be put down. And he says, because he has such an interest to go to get into the higher land, and he sees himself maleh with tzoa, which we saw in that film with Nachshoni. We saw with the person Nachshoni. I spoke about it. I don't know if I showed the film, but I spoke about it. He said that when he was up there, he felt full of tzoa. When he was up there, he felt full of excrement. He was surrounded by excrement from all his sins. And a person goes through a tremendous amount of pain as a result of it. Okay? That's what it says. Okay? Now, on a similar note, also over there, and like I said, we're going to bring a couple of halachic ramifications that come out from here. When he goes to the kever, on the way, it says the malachim. Okay, let's start with this first. The first halachic thing that comes out of this is like this. Based on this halacha, we all know that there's a din that you're not supposed to be meshaheh et amet. You're not supposed to let him wait a long time. You're supposed to try to bury him as soon as possible. We're very familiar with it. Of course, we know in Yerushalayim, the minhag is, and they're very makbid on the minhag, even if they're not going to have korei mishpacha there, even if it sacrifices him having his relatives there, they make sure not to have him wait overnight. They never let a body wait overnight. And this is the reason why, because it's an extremely painful experience when he's kacha kacha. He's a little bit here, a little bit there, and his hair, and his hair. It's a very, very difficult experience that he's not anywhere. And therefore, it's usher to keep it around at all. That's first of all. Second of all, in order to, I'll give you an example. David, the Gemara in Shabbat, and Daf Lamed says that David actually knew that he was supposed to die on Shabbat. We all know that David was supposed to die on Shabbat. That's why we say Tzidkat Tzadik by Mincha, because that's when David HaMelech died on Shabbat. But he actually he wanted to die on Erev Shabbat. He actually made a personal request if he could die on Erev Shabbat. Why did he want to die on Erev Shabbat? Because he didn't want his body to be lying around too long if he was going to die on Shabbat. So they had to wait until Motzei Shabbat, or maybe in the morning, who knows what's going to happen. But if it's on Erev Shabbat, it's a rush job. We all know that a person who dies on Erev Shabbat, they rush very much to get him buried before Shabbat comes in. So he himself requested that he himself should get buried very quickly, because he knew how bad this situation is to leave a body around for too long. Okay? Ein meshayim et hamet. You don't leave him around too long because it's a painful experience. And you can do it. So the question some of the Achronim ask is, how can you do that? You can't. He knew he was going to die in Shabbat. He has to die in Erev Shabbat. That's horrible. He wanted 1 day less of life. 24 hours less of life? We don't do that.
No, the next Friday.
I was thinking about that, but it doesn't work. Because then it was supposed to be the next Shabbat. Right, I thought about that also. But they said, he's actually preempting his death by a day. But the answer is because that's how bad this Yisurim is. Since it's so difficult, this pain is so difficult, so therefore, he said you should be careful. Okay, the Godel Etzar, and it was Mevatel, this idea of doing it. That's on one note. And second of all, and this is also very important, based on this, that therefore, as long as a person is not buried, we pass it like this, la'alacha, you're being mevatel a mitzvah tasei. The more, if one does not bury a person, then he's mevatel a mitzvah tasei. And the biggest problem about it, besides being mevatel a mitzvah tasei, is that the neshama never has menucha, because the neshama only starts going through these 11 stages. The neshama is only able to go through these 11 stages only after the body is buried properly. After the body is buried properly, only then he's able to go up from stage to stage, like it says in the Zohar, like I said in our parsha, and Parshat Vayechi.
Should we have a stadium afterwards?
Why? Because then he's starting? No, you want to do it in front of him, remember? Yeah. We prefer that he hears it all, and we want him to be there and this, whatever.
So one things as short a time as possible.
Yeah, that's true. And we say that from here we see that there's the importance of the Hespedim, that it should be in front of the body, even though it is making him a little bit more, making him suffer, but at least this way he could be part of the Hespedim. We want him to hear it because the Hespedim are for him even more than it's for us. Okay? So that's why we do it. But you are right that we shouldn't waste our time, as we say, right? When people blow hot air, as they say. It should be a little bit more to the La'inyan. Say again?
In those days when you're not allowed to make a chesed, I'd say it's a chesed.
Yeah. It's good for them, because they go quicker.
I say that if someone passes
for sure.
a day,
right.
when there's no tachon, there's no chesed.
Right, that's right.
And that's a good signal.
It's a good signal because it's faster. That's true. That's also true.
I thought that as well.
There is a certain
It's
thing.
a tough halacha, that one. Because the hesped is actually good for the mace. I thought the hesped was the...
It is good, but if there's no choice not to do it, so it's that thing. The truth is I was going to mention anyways, that, we'll see it later. There's another thing that's brought down, halacha, if you're already asking, that if a person does not have hespedim set on him, or if he dies when it's raining, we spoke about this last week, I think you brought it up last week, when he dies when it's raining and the rain is pelting on his body, or if he's not buried properly, so all these things sound very bad. On one instance, according to what we're saying, it's bad because he's not buried properly. Or he's nitra fa'idei chaya. Unfortunately, the majority of his body, chas v'shalom, was eaten by an animal, or something to that extent. So it says mefurish over there, nechshav loy kapar b'kach. At least a person, like Warren Sanhedrin, Mem Zayin says, it's considered for him a kapara, the simin yafehu lamet b'shamayim. It's a simin yafehu. Now you'll tell me it's not good because he wasn't buried, he wasn't this or that, and there's but at the same time, when a person does suffer because not of his own account, it wasn't in the same spot, so he got a kapara, he got an atonement, and therefore he gets up in Shamayim. Kadosh Baruch Hu helps him out for such a thing. And obviously people who die al Kiddush Hashem is obviously from that. So if I'm already mentioning that, so we see from here already an answer to what some people ask. Wow, if you don't get buried, it's very bad, right? You don't get a proper kapara. But we see that no, it's a kapara. And what happened in the Holocaust, where the ashes were only left of them, and most of the ashes were not necessarily buried. They did bury some of the ashes, you should know. Some of the people were able to do it. They tried to be able to do it. There were, in the beginning, bodies were buried, by the way, in the Shoah. In the beginning they were. They didn't get so meshuchlal, they weren't so technological events that they started thinking about burning them and making all the ovens and all that, like they did in Auschwitz. In the beginning there was, if you go to Treblinka, they have big open areas there where the bodies were buried. They have big open areas where they were burying the bodies, but then obviously there wasn't any room. There wasn't any room to do it, so they had to start burning bodies in order to take care of that. But all those people that were burnt, al Kiddush Hashem, so obviously that goes into this category I just told you from Gemara Sanhedrin, they had a full kapara, called Kiddush Hashem obviously also, and therefore it was okay, and the neshama goes straight up because they received the kapara that way. But, however, on the other account, If a person voluntarily says that he wants his body to be burnt, right? And this is brought le'alacha, the Rambam brings this, that if a person says he wants his body to be burnt, as opposed to being buried, he's a Rasha Gomer, and you're not allowed to listen to him, even if it's your parent, and there's no mitzvah of Kibud Avim, or any type of thing like that, or shtiyot like that, to listen to them, and you're chayav and obligated to bury the body. And if he does get burnt, then he's in big trouble, because doesn't know, his neshama will never find any rest. The person's neshama will never find any rest, and the halacha is brought down, based on this problem, that the ashes that are left over, you're not allowed to bury those ashes in a Jewish Beit HaKvarot. You can throw it in the seven seas if you want, do whatever you want. But you can't put it in the Beit HaKvarot. Okay, it's not allowed to be buried, because we always hold that you never bury a Rasha etzel a tzaddik. A Rasha is not allowed to be buried next to a tzaddik, and he's a Rasha for requesting such a thing, and therefore you can bury him in a goyish place or whatever. You don't bury him with the Jews. Okay, so that's very important for people to know, because sometimes, unfortunately, especially in this day and age, it's a very common question. A lot of people like to be buried in walls. Now, when I'm talking about walls, I'm not talking about what they have in Har Menuchot, with the kuchim, where they have little cubbies, which is in dirt, and according to many places, Rabbi Genish is not fond of it, but many places can hold it's okay, because the mice in the olden days, people were buried in caves, right?
Catacombs.
What's called?
Catacombs.
Catacombs, right. Right, we know, if you go to Tzfat, they have catacombs over there. On the side of the Beit HaKvarot, you'll see there's a few caves you can go in, and there are places where where people are buried there on the side. They have it over there by the people who are buried, actually, who were killed by skila, or sreifa. The people who were punished by Beit Din, they have a whole section there of people who are buried inside of a cave, who were killed by Beit Din, had a meted Beit Din. Yeah? In Tzfat, on the side, yeah.
Why?
Take a tour. Look on the side, I think. On the side over there.
Because they were Rishonim.
Not far from the mikveh of the Rizal, if I'm not mistaken. If my geography is
Because
correct.
they were Rishonim, that's why they put them there?
No, I don't think it was Kasher then. I'm not sure. And they're not considered Rishayim, by the way. The ones who were punished by Beit Din are not Rishayim anymore. They're buried together with Jews. They're allowed to be. That's fine, because they got a kapara. By being killed, they got a full kapara. It was better they died that way.
So someone who's cremated loses also that Tchias HaMesim?
Someone who's cremated by his own volition, you mean?
Yeah, also loses
It's not so simple, yeah. It's very problematic. What you're asking, the answer I would say is no, but there is, when we speak about Tchiyat HaMeitim, I hope we're going to get to it. I'm running out of days instead of weeks, but when we get to Tchiyat HaMeitim, you'll see the Mekubalim are a lot more easier over here. They're a lot more easier here when it gets to it. We'll wait for the next Tchiyat HaMeitim. Tinshim is a different story. You mean, and he asks to be burned, you're saying? Right, okay. That's a good question. He's asking, what about a Tinshim Nizv that's to be burned? So then, it's a good question. Okay, maybe he's on a Russia. If he gets real classifications, Tinshim Nizv, so usually we're pretty easy on him. Okay, well they could be they'll bury the ashes in a Beit HaKvarot, but they'll put it on the side or whatever. They'll put it in a special section. Let's say together with other Tinshim Nizvos, right? Where people are samach al Shabbat. Okay, but I do speak very strongly because I want people to know this, and people think that it's not a joke, and it's very, very chashuv. Okay. What else does it say there? Oh, so the neshama never finds a proper resting place if it never gets buried properly. Because, and this is hard to understand, I don't fully understand it myself, whatever, that's a big deal, I don't understand, but together with the neshama, a chelik of your goof, a ruchani, it says, goes with the neshama. But the gufa gashmi needs to be buried properly for the gufa ruchani, the physical body, a ruchani, to go with the neshama. My guess is that means the ruach, which I've mentioned to you before. There's the neshama, ruach, and nefesh. The nefesh we spoke about last week. The nefesh is the lower spirits, let's say, stays with the body. We brought like 10 proofs to this idea. That's what we spoke about last week. The ruach, we mentioned, goes upstairs. Every time you go to sleep, the neshama, the higher level, goes upstairs. But when a person dies, so the ruach goes up with the neshama. When the person dies, when he gets buried properly, so then it's able to go up. Until there, he's in turmoil. He never has a proper resting. Tsar gadol in neshama. That's a lashon of the Zohar. You should know it's also brought in the Midrashim in two places. It's a tsar gadol. And therefore a person has to be very makpid to do it. You should know that, I don't know if people realize, whenever you see chas v'shalom by a pigua, how do you say in English, pigua? A terrorist attack, yeah. Sometimes that, yeah. When you go, and when you see, you'll see that the Zaka guys, all the guys on motorcycles with the things with the pace flying on it, right? Those guys all come, they don't come to help the Hatzalah. Okay, then people think, oh, they're just kind of there, like, extra. First of all, they always beat out Salah by miles. That's besides the point. They don't just come. They do it because they're coming to do Chesed Shel Emet, because they go and they do something that the Chilonim would not do. What do the most Chilonim do? They take the body, but they'll get a hose out and they'll spritz out all the dam. They don't do that. They will take baby wipes. They will take everything they can to clean up every last drop of blood that they can get their hands on. You understand? Because they want to bury all the blood. Because like we said over here, burial is very, very important. And the less of a person that is buried, the more painful, let's say, that it is. They want, the halacha is, and halacha in Shulchan Aruch, in Shin Samach Gimel, that a person has to all be buried in his whole entire body is supposed to be buried in the ground. So they will go out of their way, and it's a meticulous job and takes hours, and it's not so pretty. I assume they get used to it, but they go and pick up every piece of the aver, every fingernail, every blood. They try to do it. Much easier to get a hose and just spritz it all down, but they don't do that. They're very makpid, and I think they respect. I think the authorities respect them to do that. I think they let them do it. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
How do they know which is which parts?
That I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard question. You say on buses and stuff, right? I mean, recently they're individuals. It's easier, but you're right. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you have to know. They make sure to bury everything, so they bury them. I understand they bury them. So you know what? It helps with Tchiyat Meitim also. Obviously, in Tchiyat Meitim, all the pieces have to come back. So you want to make sure as much as buried as possible. But Al Kapanim, that's the idea of not wasting time with the Met, not pushing it off, and also making sure that every part of him is buried.
There's no Indian to bury blood of somebody who's alive, right?
No. A person alive is not. What's a machloket? That's a machloket. If a person gets an aver cut off, I was actually asked this. There was someone who was a wife who was a doctor, and she said that someone was born with 6 fingers. So, procedure, when someone's born with 6 fingers, is you immediately cut off the finger. Cut it off. Why should a person have 6 fingers? Better with 5. So they cut off, and over there, she works in Tel Aviv. What they do is take the finger and throw it in the garbage. That's what they do. So you want to know. So she's makbid. She's from Jew, so she takes it and buries it. Lamaisa, it's not usher to throw it in the garbage. It wasn't like a rishut. It wasn't like a horrible thing to throw in the garbage. But it's appropriate to throw it in, to bury it. A, because of what we're speaking about now. That's one reason. And B, they talk about for Kohanim. For Kohanim, so they shouldn't have problems in case they're around or whatever, if the Aver's around. But okay, but Bikr didn't, it was okay. Anyway, so that's this idea. Now, I'm just continuing a little bit this idea about what happens when the person's on the way to the kever. It says the malachim, all the angels of his maisim follow him. His actions ki'ilu go together with the met, with the dead person. Holchim it imo lefanav miyamino mismolo. They surround him. They go in front of him on the sides, the left and right. And it says, it gives the details. I'm not going to go over details by the good guy. It says good things about him. By the guy not. But all those details, they go with him, and they beat him to the kever. They go and jump in the kever. All the malachim, which are his maisim, the bad angels and the good angels. Well, I think we saw them in the near-death experiences. A couple of people speak about it. Okay, but they all go into the kever. They go into the kever before. If someone made a movie out of this, it would be a big seller. I'm just telling you, it would be like very, based on all factual information. You can make a very thing, and it'd be very good. But nobody would go because Chayden don't go to movies, so it wouldn't help so much.
There's no happy ending.
There's no happy ending, right? That's true. Yeah, no, it depends.
This applies to
A good majority of it, yeah. A majority of it, yeah. Some, not every single detail. Yes, Goyim also have all the same details.
What's the point?
Yeah. What?
It's
Okay, when we speak about Gan Eden, we're going to speak about the difference between Goyim and things. All the over details here could be not every detail, but in Gan Eden you're going to see the difference between where a Jew is and where a Goy is. Okay? Because they also go to Gan Eden. We also have that. Okay? So all the Malachim go into the kever, and Kilu wait for him there, good and bad. And when he's put into the kever, and it gets closed, and he's lowered or whatever, he's lowered into the kever, so then that's when the Chibuta kever, which again we'll try to speak about hopefully next week, will happen to him. Okay? That's what happens. It goes into the kever beforehand, and he's able to do it. That's the famous reason, and I mentioned this in the early shirim, I think in the beginning shirim, why there's a cherem in Yerushalayim, a very strong cherem, and I think I mentioned they're very, very strong about it, they're very makbid about it, that no tzetzaim, no children and also grandchildren should follow the niftar, should follow the dead person, because it is a kitrug, it's bad for him, not for them, it's bad for him. And they make the wife also not do it just as a loy plug. It's more, the wife is not necessarily connected, she's not a tzatzaim. But since it's part of the family, so she also doesn't follow the kever. Anyways, women are not always so welcome in a Beit HaKfarot. They're not really supposed to go. So everyone follows the Emet except for the children and grandchildren, etc. Any tzatzaim. And the reason for that is because since all these malachim are here, all these things are here, the good and the bad, so also including in that is spilled semen that he had. And the more children that he has around that are alive, so also the children that he has that is not alive, it's not. And these are the words, listen to the words that he says. It's written, it says like this, that Achrim, he says like this, Saradam mitatfim bo kochot atuma. The kochot atuma are around the body. V'nivraim ruchot ra'ot misham. There are evil spirits. That's why we wash our hands when we leave the Beit HaKvarat. And at the time that he dies, einan mitpardin mimeno. It says it's actually tafus on his sar, on his hair, which is a place of tumah. That's why we wash our hands when we cut our hair. Over there, they cling onto him. The klipot cling onto his hair on his body of the mace, right? It clings onto the hair of his body and won't let him go. Umilavim oto lekever. They are also milavim him to the kever. They escort him to the kever. They escort him. Listen to the words that he says. Kihem banov, because they are his children. That's pretty scary. You understand? These klipot that were created by spilled semen in the wrong places are his children. That's a lashon. I'm just quoting a lashon. It's not Gishmak lashon. But that's what it says in the Shla and the Tamei Mitzvahs and others. Ve'ein tsar gadol mizeh rachmana litzlan. Ve'ein tsar gadol. I have to quote what's quoted. I can't. Okay. But because Keilu, he's being the children want to be malav him. So the less his real children follow him, the less they say cling on to him or follow him also, and the less kitrug it has for the thing. I think I mentioned it. There's now the whole shir should be Leila, my father-in-law. But the grandchildren, my children were there, and a few of his children were there, and they drove ahead. They didn't follow him. They stayed on the sides during that. When they were coming, they wanted to get next to him or whatever to do that. And the guy over there started screaming at them, "You don't know what you're doing. You're macher." And he was about to put a cherem on the kids. His mom was how good of a bunch of American kids, you know what I mean? His kids they didn't know, what do you want from me? They didn't realize. So he was mamish, very strong about it, that you can't follow, and he said, you don't realize what you're doing, and this. So I was a son-in-law, I'm not a tzatzaim, so I was kind of, we call the referee over there, to be able to keep it alive. But once he was put into the kever, and then they start shoveling, so then a son or a child can also do it, because he's already in there, because the malachim already jumped in ahead of time. You follow? They already jumped in ahead of time.
Why Yerushalayim only? If it's such
why are they so machmir? Because of that? Yeah, because Yerushalayim is, first of all, in Beit Shemesh are also machmir, by the way. Beit Shemesh are also in Eretz Chaim. They took on minig Yerushalayim, but you're right. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly why. I don't know a good answer. It's a cherem. You put in. It was a cherem to do it. Yes.
So certain
person doesn't listen.
Chavei Kedusha took on that cherem. So
right.
It's a cherem.
It's true. Yeah, you're right. I mean, and therefore you're saying if a person doesn't listen to it, he's put in cherem. That's what you're saying. No, is that right?
I understood that Rutzen Kanievsky, as a young girl, once followed by mistake to somebody, maybe to the
grandparent,
her grandfather.
Okay.
They did a big Qatar's cherem for her.
For her, wow. Yeah. Pshua. Okay, they didn't really follow him, these guys, just so you know. So in case you're putting him in cherem right now, my brother-in-law's, they didn't mamish follow, but I hear you saying they had to do a Torah's cherem in order to get rid of it. I don't know if there's so makpidat kedekach, but it is something to be very bad. You should know in the tzava of many, the Kivei Eger wrote in his tzava, the Shulchan Gavoa, Rav Kluger, the Yisod V'Shor Shavode, they wrote in their tzava, their will, they wrote to be makpid. You're asking why they don't do it in chutzar. These gedolim all wrote in their will, don't follow my kever. They actually said, don't follow my kever. A lot of these gedolim said, don't follow my kever. So they were trying to keep to it. Just the actual cherem, in other words, where everybody has it, is in Yerushalayim. In the other places, if you're in chutzar, it's good to say not to do it, or it's good to tell them, but it's not an official rule. You're surrounded by goyim. I guess you can't make rules like that. You can't do things like that. I don't know.
I have two questions. One is for women.
If it's one of kitzur, yeah.
The idea is the derech.
Yeah. So for a woman, it shouldn't be a cherem. No. For a woman, make it in sachasa. It's not a sir. No. It's not a sir. It's how tough it is to be a man, huh? It's not easy.
I was just in a Levi, and the sons were there. And somebody said no. Achrei a kever, no, about lifnei. They wouldn't be
in front.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he did also. That's what they did also. Yeah. If you go ahead, because It's following. It's not leavnei just a little bit in front. It wasn't like here and here like that. They drive ahead. They drive ahead to the kever. They go ahead like considerably. At least not within Dalet Amot. They make sure not to be in the vicinity of the Met when he's going. Just a little bit ahead doesn't help.
But to be ahead,
To be way ahead of the Levaya, that's
the whole
fine.
thing is accompanying. No problem.
Right. Right.
But
That's right.
you'd think the kitchen would not be on those children that are alive, type thing.
It's not on them. It causes a
kitchen that
kitchen.
was lost.
And they give a cherem to the kids because you're making problems for your father. You're being over in kibbut avim. You're making problems for your father by doing that. You understand? It's not a kitchen on them, but by them being there, they're causing anguish to the Met, and that's why it's a problem.
How much
Listen-
effort anybody in Chutzlaritz should we go to be mapped on these things or not at all?
In Chutzlaritz you can't. If they don't, it's not official cherem. A person can be makbid on himself or tell his relatives. You could do things like that. You can tell people that you know, but you're going to start making a whole ruckus about it. Can't do it. People don't know. Again, this is all a pi Kabbalah. Yeah, it's not really, you open Shulchan Aruch, you won't find this anywhere. So can you really be machmir to tell people what to do? It's like most people are really osik and sod, so they want to start changing the world, but no, you can't change the world. Okay, so today you're osik and sod a little bit. Karan, you're not. There's not one word in Shulchan Aruch about this, so you can't start making a thing. All right, so Al Kapanim, that's what comes out. Now, based on that, I'm a little bit short on time, so let's just quickly. I just want to finish this section so I could start Chibut HaKever, not start Chibut HaKever, but speaking about Chibut HaKever a little bit for next time. I want to speak about an important thing which I did speak about last year in the shul here. I actually have papers, if you want to see, I was translating to English, about people who get moved to Eretz Yisrael. Now, I mentioned that you're not allowed to waste time. You have to go very quickly to get buried. A person has to get buried very quickly, and we all know that if a person wants to get buried in a city, let's say in Los Angeles, or I actually wasn't mentioning England because it's close, but England's worse than America, right? In England, they make you wait 2 or 3 days all the time, right? No. I thought to get the procedure to get out of there, it's like people always tell me all the blueprints. No,
Some issues, but not.
They let you get out quick. Oh, okay, fine. One time I heard that it was very big.
Yeah, once you got your green paper.
Green paper, but I thought to get those green papers took a while. No?
Only if you
Is that
coroner gets
I know, in America they're much quicker about it. Okay, someone told me in England they make problems. Okay, fine.
There was a problem, one
Okay.
particular coroner.
Okay.
A certain lady, right, who decided she was a job.
I know one person had to wait almost a week because he was having trouble with the thing, but okay.
A certain coroner was a job winner. And the problem is like this time of the year, when all the Goyim are on holiday.
Oh,
Right? And she would not open up shop.
for him. Well,
Yeah, she was her husband was
First died, first
and
first time. First.
the community,
Check
because
out,
the community took the same stand. They were all set up.
Okay.
And they had a big, but that's not what you're referring to.
No, I heard from someone, I've heard more than once, yeah. But you're saying nowadays it's easier. Okay, no problem. Okay. So anyway, so what's this idea about moving to Eretz Yisrael? When you move to Eretz Yisrael, when you send a body to Eretz Yisrael, we all know that it takes a lot of extra time as opposed to if he would have been in the same place. If he would have been in the same place, he would have been very much quicker. We just finished saying that it's not kishmak, not very enjoyable for him to hang around. So I was allowed. So the answer is, le'halacha, and this brought le'halacha in Shulchan Aruch, in Yoreh De'ah, the end of Chela Gimel, is brought that wherever a person dies, that's where he has to be buried. He has to be buried in the city, with one exception is Eretz Yisrael. That's the only exception, okay? B'ikaron, the only exception is if he wants to go to Eretz Yisrael, because it's Mokum Shel Kedusha. Over there, you are allowed to do it. And what's the raya? Our Parsha, right? Our Parsha, and it's crazy when you read about it in the Parsha, right? Our Parsha, Yaakov Avinu, 70 days. They did the Chanata with the Spadim, 70 days. You read, it's like, oh my gosh, Rabbanu Shalom. It's a long time. And also Yosef Atzadik, when he was nifter, they also took him to Eretz Yisrael, even though there was a big ikuv and it took a little while, still, it was permitted to do it. So from here, we more or less learn this idea that for the sake of Kedusha to Eretz Yisrael, in order to be buried, and it's brought down in the Rambam, okay, that therefore it's allowed to do it. The Rambam says these words, okay? The Rambam says, Hashochen be'eretz Yisrael. Now this is important, I'm mentioning this on purpose for everyone here, and everyone who's not here, who's sitting in the camera here, maybe in Chutz La'aretz. She'hashochen be'eretz Yisrael avonatav mechulim lo. If a person's in Eretz Yisrael, you're in good shape. Your avonot are mochel. You get a mechila. Every Daled Amos that you walk in Eretz Yisrael, you get a chelik in Olam Haba. Doesn't mean if you're doing averas and eating on Yom Kippur and doing this and saying Eretz Yisrael, then you could do that. And some people like to use this as a reason to. But, okay, v'kol hakaver b'nit kaper lo. But, and this is the most important line, the person who is buried in Eretz Yisrael gets a kapara, because the mokum is a mizbeach kapar v'chaper ad matolamo al admat tuma tmei tamut, right? It says Alright, so yes, what does it mean, Admat Tmeya Tamut? The person dies in Admat Tmeya, because he says, Eino dome kol tato michayim lemisha koletoto le'achar mita. In other words, even if a person gets flown here, it's nowhere close to when person actually lived here and died in Eretz Yisrael. It's on a much higher darga. Okay? And therefore, based on this, there are achrayim, and this, again, I spoke about this on a separate, and I have papers, if anybody wants the papers, that the idea of not sending, we don't send everybody who wants to move to Eretz Yisrael here. Okay? Anyone who dies, after a person is dead, and he wants to be flown to Eretz Yisrael, let's say a person was a Mechalel Shabbat, he wasn't the person on such a darga, and he decides he wants to be here. Many Achronim, Moshe Feinstein, Heinemann, and others were very against it. Eretz Yisrael is not a Beit HaKvarot, it's not a Beit HaKvarot. You hate Eretz Yisrael, you don't want to show up here, you don't have anything to do with it, and then, when it's time to get buried, so then you decide to get buried here. It's a bizayon a little bit to the place. Not everybody was pro this idea. Lamaisa though, like the Rambam himself brings, and we know the Gemara says Gdolei Olam, but people who were big Dolim, Hayu Malichim Leiteim L'Sham, they would come here. And we know there are many Gemara. The Gemara in Ketuvah brings that Ula came here, and Mod Katan brings many Maisim of people that came to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel. And we all know back then, oh boy, that was a trip, right? Back then there was no El Al. It was quite a trip to be able to take him on a horse and Agala in order to get him here from Bavel, from Babylon, etc., which is Iraq, etc. It was a long, long trip to be able to do that. Based on this idea, it's brought in Tshuva from Rav Sternbach. Rav Sternbach has in Tshuva Van Hagot in Chelik Gimel Siman Shenayim, that someone asked him also about, there's a certain Rav, and also this, a very chashav Rav in London. He was nifter in London, and he was nifter before Rosh Hashanah. But the only way to get him to Eretz Yisrael, because of the Rosh Hashanah problems, and being able to get him, he would end up waiting approximately 10 days. He would have to wait. They'd have to keep him about approximately 10 days to get him here. It would take a long time, because there was a lot of procedure, because it was right in the night of Rosh Hashanah, till Rosh Hashanah is over, until they're able to get the papers together, maybe it was a while ago, I don't know. Okay, until they're able to do it, it said it would take a while, take 10 days to do it. So they asked the Rav, and the Rav over there said it was okay, and he brought the Raya I just mentioned to you, because we see back in the olden days to come from Bavel, that was a lot more than 10 days. We see Yaakov Avinu, 70 days. To go to Eretz Yisrael is worth it. Rav Sternbach, over there, he has a whole long piece over there, saying, what about Baltalin? You're leaving him for a long time. Maybe it's a problem. So he gives a whole shtickle Torah. That putting him in an aron, that itself is a Maisa Kfura. Putting him in a coffin for a period of time when you are not able to put him in the ground. In a place where you could put him again, you put him in an aron, that's no good. That's in Shulchan Aruch. But if you have an option to put him in an aron, because right now, presently, he's not able to be buried, that's also called a Maisa Kfura. So he held, if you put him in an aron, in a coffin, for the period of time until those 10 days, until eventually they move him to Eretz Yisrael, it's okay. But he was not into freezers. He held that the freezer is not considered. He held that a freezer is not considered a good enough. Let me just finish. It's not considered good enough to be considered as a burial. So he said it's better to use some type of shots. There's shots that you can give to a dead person to keep him intact, so he doesn't decompose so quickly. Okay, in order to keep it around. And therefore, he said it's better not to do it. But based on this idea of Eretz Yisrael, and again, if you want, I could tell you, it's all separate here, and I don't have enough time about moving to Eretz Yisrael, sending bodies to Eretz Yisrael. We at least see that a person should live here and die here. That's a lot more better than like all the Gedolim tried to do, right? The Ramban, etc. They've only gone. But after that, I just want to mention one quick thing so I can just finish up here, is based on that, at least we see there is a minhag from here, even when people are buried in Chutz La'aretz, to bury them with a little bit of Afer Shel Eretz Yisrael. There is a minhag to bury them with Afer Shel Eretz Yisrael. We work in the Chevra Kadisha. Yeah, my in-laws are in the Chevra Kadisha. So that everyone knows that every time someone is here that is flying back to Los Angeles, you have a chiv to take a bag of Afer with you. They always take Afer, because if they order it from here overseas to LA, they send you a bag about the size of this big for about $3 of Afer Yisrael. You go outside here, you get Afer Yisrael. But over here, I always get them for 10 shekel, a bag like this, and someone just sticks it in, about 10 kilos. It's good. Okay, I have some use of living here at least, something useful for me to do. We're able to do that. Yeah, I have to be careful. Yeah. I was thinking about that, but I don't think anyone's gonna. Anyway, so that's that idea. Officially, it's legal, by the way. It's not so bad. Anyway, so that's that. The idea of Afer Yisrael. I do want to mention in the tzava of many of the Gedolim, they wrote, Rav Shlomo Kulger, who was one of the big Gedolei Olam, he wrote in his tzava that he said, please, I beg of you to get some offer of Eretz Yisrael, and to put at least a little bit, and here he says where to put it, by the way. Put the minhag by us in general, the minhag now in Chutz La'aretz, almost everywhere, is to put on top of the eyes. Okay, they put it on the eyes usually, that's the place where they do it. But he writes like this, please put it on top of my head, on top of the Brit Kodesh, on the Brit, and on the liv, on the heart. That's where he says. And he says, and if you have a little bit more offer, then put on top of the eyes, and if you're able to put on top of the makom tefillin. That's where Rosh Hashanah Kohen said. And he says this lashon, v'im chas v'shalom, you can learn a lot from this. He says, if chas v'shalom, you're not able to get the offer of Eretz Yisrael, so he says, at least get from the offer, get some dirt from the karka, from the ground of some shul or Beit HaMidrash. I like that. And he says, ideally speaking, if you can get some dirt from the place where the Shliach Tzibur stands. I like that. Right? If I get some dirt from the place where the Shliach Tzibur stands. We don't have such option these days, but back then, they used to be swimming with snakes and rodents all over the place. So anyway, so he said, try to get some dirt from underneath the place. You see from here, the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, if it's not there, then it's here. And I know what he meant. He obviously meant because all the B'tei Knesset and Chutz La'aretz are going to come to Eretz Yisrael. So he meant at least get some of the offer from there that's able to do it. The Chuvas Van Haggad over there, the Rav Sternbach writes that his father, who lived in Chutz La'aretz, was very makpid in his room. He always had a little bag of offer Eretz Yisrael, but specifically offer from Har Zeitim. He took from Har Zeitim. Where's Har Zeitim? It's right on the mountain, right? What do you call that? The mountain top. What do you call it? The Mount of Olives, whatever. Yeah, okay. Right in the mountain, right on the Har Bait over there, and over there is where he says, because that's the place where Tchiyat HaMeitim is going to start. All Tchiyat HaMeitim starts from Har Zeitim. So ideally speaking, one should be buried in Har Zeitim. Tough Nogis, nobody here is going to be buried in Har Zeitim because there's no room. My wife's grandmother actually was buried there. We went there in the Levaya. It wasn't a very geschmack getting there. You have to go with like armed guards all the way there and in and back, and while you're there, it's a little bit scary to be there, but it's a great place to be buried, because over there is where the Tchiyat HaMeitim is going to start. So he even says, even if you're not able to do that, and even if you're buried in Eretz Yisrael, it's still good to get a little bit dirt, if you can, from Har Zeitim. So we're going to take a field trip tomorrow, if everybody wants on a school bus, to Har Zeitim and try to get some offer there. Right? Right? The ideally speaking, but he says that his father used to keep in his room for two reasons. A, to remember Yom HaMitah, to always remind him that one day he's going there, and also to always have offer ready from Har Zeitim so he could be buried. Dafka specifically wanted to be buried with offer from Har Zeitim. From at least we see from all here the importance of being buried in Eretz Yisrael on the kapara. And with this I finish, that they do say one thing, you might get the kapara by getting a little bit of this dirt in Chutz La'aretz, but you still have the problem of Chibut HaKever, okay, which is more powerful in Chutz La'aretz, and Gilgul Mechalot. In the time with Tchiyat HaMeitim, as we all know, people in Chutz La'aretz have to roll themselves to Eretz Yisrael to get here, which is apparently a very painful experience, as opposed to people who are here have a VIP. Okay, over here you have VIP without having to do too much Gilgulim. I mean, Beit Shem is also not Geschmack. I think you have to do Gilgulim to get to there. I'm not sure. You know, I have to do a little bit of Gilgulim. It's not as bad as, coming from America or something. The Atlantic Ocean, it's a pain. There's a lot to go. Right? But over here, at least, it's a little bit closer. But Kopanim, this is the Nakuda.
This is 38.
Now the 38 is better, right? It's not so bad. That's what at least from here we see the stage that I was talking about, from going from the house until the kever, the mazikim that are involved here. Next week we're going to speak about being in the kever, okay, what happens a little bit in the kever, and from there, fortunately or unfortunately, we're going to be speaking about what chibut kever is all about, okay? Tomorrow